Redditors who killed someone in self-defense. What happened? Did you get blamed for it? I was woken up by my fiancée telling me that she thinks someone opened the back door, which is always locked. It was a loud-ass door with an even louder screen door that I've never heard anything else sound like. So I told her to lay on the floor and call 911 as I grabbed my handgun from the nightstand. As she was whispering to the operator, I could hear at least one person talking downstairs. It turned out that there were two people. I could hear footsteps slowly coming up the stairs. My fiancée set the phone down and I told her to cover her ears. The bedroom door opened and a man was standing in the doorway with something in his hands. I later found out it was a knife. I fired 4 shots. 2 hit the man in the doorway in the chest, 1 hit the second person who was standing near the top of the stairs in the shoulder, and the 4th shattered my toilet down the hall. The police showed up soon after that. The rest of the night was mostly a blur. The guy in the doorway died there, the one I shot in the shoulder lived and was charged with his burglar buddy's death and a host of other charges. I also remember slipping on the stairs because of the water. I was never blamed for anything. I was asked to go to the station that night to talk to them for a while, but I was able to go with my fiancé and not in the back of a cop car. The 911 recording backed up my whole story. I've always wondered this. What do they do with the mess that's left over after you kill someone in your house? Obviously, there's a body, bullet holes, broken stuff, and blood everywhere. Who pays for it? How long is the investigation? How long does the body stay there before they move it? Also, what is the emotional damage like? Are you scared of your house? Do you feel uncomfortable knowing someone broke in, knowing you killed someone? Sorry for all of the questions and feel free to ignore them if they cause flashbacks or stuff like that. I'm a new homeowner and have a shotgun locked and loaded, and I've wondered these questions for years. I can only answer those from my experience. The body was removed before we went home the next day and the blood was patted dry. We replaced the toilet the next day and the insurance company reimbursed us. The carpet my father and I tore up the next day and we sanded and stained the floor underneath. There was a bit of an uneasiness for a while in the home after that. We ended up moving out after 2 years. I got over it sooner than my fiancé did. After about a year though, it was all back to normal. The trial was about 7 months after the incident and was a few days long, but I only had to show up one day. I've posted this before in another thread, so apologies if it sounds familiar. I'd been kickboxing competitively for 10 years prior to this incident. I had broken my arm and had a newborn child. I had one arm in a sling and my baby in a carrier that was in my other hand. A guy must have thought I looked like an easy target and pulled a knife on me while I was walking through a relatively quiet alley connecting 2 streets. My only thoughts were of my baby, so I kicked the guy in the thigh hard. He fell over and I followed up with a roundhouse to the side of his head. Only issue was that he had fallen next to a bollard, and when I kicked him his head smashed off it. I don't think I'll ever forget the noise his head made when it hit off the bollard, and I'll never forget it. I was charged with manslaughter, but the charges were ultimately dropped due to the fact I had my child, the attacker was armed, and I had no prior convictions. I still feel absolutely dreadful about what happened, and if I could go back and change it I would. But what's done is done. I'll never forget it. Brutal, but with your child in your arm I think you did the right thing. There was no possible way you could have known the blow would kill him. I know this is a serious topic and it probably hurts you, but honestly the description was something straight out of Hollywood, badass. I really don't mean to be insensitive saying that, and if I offended you I'm sorry. Not at all, no need to apologize. It's not really something I talk about often, but people who have been told had a similar reaction to yourself, so while I don't feel the same I understand your thinking. My mother was with an abusive boyfriend when I was 12. He would beat my mother and me, and threatened to shoot us if we did anything against him. One night things got serious and I was trying to find a way out because I knew he was going to kill us. But it got too far by then and I had no way out. In an attempt to save myself and my mother, I shot him. He died soon after. I believed that I had done no wrong and wouldn't face consequences for my actions. After all, he was going to kill us if I didn't. This was in the state of Ohio though, and I ended up being sentenced to jail for 4 years. I still think it was unjust for that state to steal my childhood simply because I was trying to stay alive. But I have moved on since then and try to do my best to make the best of my adult life. Wait, they arrested a 12-year-old? They certainly did, and incarcerated him for 4 years. I wish you the best, man. I have a friend who went through this with his biological father. Monsters come in many forms. I'm sure your mother is immeasurably proud of you. She acts proud on the surface, but I know she's still mildly afraid of me. She always is worried I'll get mad and kill someone again, but it wasn't anger that caused it last time, it was fear. And odds are I will never find myself in a situation like that again. I was working in a prison in the UK. While doing my daily routine of area fabrication check in a cell, I had the door shut. I turned around sharply and 3 inmates were standing there. I knew what was going to happen. Instantly I pushed my personal and they rushed me. I shielded myself as best I could while these 3 guys wailed punches and kicks on me. I started fighting back, and managed to catch one in the throat with a punch that crushed his windpipe. As he dropped gasping for air, the other 2 left. I should have tried to perform first aid, but I just stood there and watched him die. An investigation was launched and I had to appear in court. Nothing came of it, but I still think about it sometimes. Shit man. Don't feel bad about it though, I'd imagine they didn't intend to have a chat with you. The weird thing is, I don't really feel bad. I just feel nothing. That's what eats at me when I think about it. How did the other 2 inmates leave if they locked themselves in the cell with you? They cannot lock the cell. They closed it behind them to hide it from the cameras. Officer were also arriving quickly, ordering inmates to their cells. They were there in minutes, maybe less. I don't truly remember much, just being escorted away and taken to the healthcare unit. From the reports, other officer performed first aid until paramedics arrived. Wow, did you still work there afterwards? Only for a few more months. Shortly after I was attacked and ended up getting stabbed in my leg with a shiv. Quit straight after. I killed 2 people. Work the night shift, so I normally get home around 1 to 1:30 a.m. and most times my mother is asleep this time. However, I could see the living room lights were on and 2 big shadows were moving around in my house. This was extremely out of the ordinary, so I unclipped my Smith & Wesson SD9VE from my holster and slowly peeked in through a window. There were 2 guys in their mid-40s in my living room throwing things around and rummaging trough drawers. One man had a handgun and I figured I could wait and call the police from outside the house and keep an eye on them to make sure they don't head for the bedrooms on the 2nd floor. However, when I glanced to the couch, I saw my mother huddled with my 12-year-old niece who must have been spending the night. I knew if I waited for the cops this could go south before they got there. I was able to signal my mother to cover my niece's eyes and ears. I waited till the 2 men were on the far side of the room. I turned the doorknob and burst into the house with my weapon pointed at the man with the pistol. I told him to drop his weapon. Then it happened. It felt like slow motion. I saw his arm start to flick upward and I fired 3 rounds into center mass. The second man reached behind his back and I had no choice but to put 4 rounds into him. What I can tell you is it's not like the movies where a person dies instantly. In real life people gurgle, cry, asks for family members, ask you why you did it and so on. Were there any consequences from prosecutors asking questions after the event? Nothing besides some initial hostility from responding cops. I get it though, I'm sure half of my sleepy Stepford Suburbistan called the cops to report gunshots. Thankfully my niece didn't see anything. My mother got her out of the house right after. Both guys were typical looking white methy types with records. I had to hand in my firearm for a while and didn't talk to the police till the next day. Got my gun back after a few days and my lawyer told me no charges were being filed. I thought I was going to be in some shit due to me not seeing the other man's firearm before I shot, but it didn't seem to be a factor. My dad's friend, in his 80s, was robbed by a 20-something guy he knew and thought was his friend. They had gone to antique shows together. This guy and his buddies knew the old dude had antiques and broke in, beat him, tied him up. He asked to go to the bathroom and like most old guys my dad knows probably do, had a pistol in the bathroom. One of the 3 attackers died of a gunshot wound, one unhit, one superficially. Old guy died maybe a year or 2 later, pretty heartbroken at being betrayed and how some of his carnival and depression glass was broken in the robbery. That's a bummer. My dad is the same way with people he meets. He's old and will often befriend people who will talk antiques with him. He's also hired the poor and recovering addicts to do work on his property. Over half of them seem to have stolen or borrowed money from him. But my dad is also a narcissist. He finds and hires people in need so he can boss them around and they are indebted to him. Super late, but oh well. A guy attacked me at 3 a.m. while I was walking to work. Literally barreled out of the woods and tackled me onto concrete with his belt undone. He broke 3 of my ribs and dislodged a vertebrae. Broke my jaw. I got this surge of adrenaline, and I'm so thankful for that. I tried to choke him long enough to render him unconscious. And I did. He never woke up. It still bothers me sometimes, nearly 10 years later. I was arrested and questioned in the hospital. Uncuffed the following morning after the police obtained security camera footage. I've been asked before how I managed to hold the choke long enough to kill him. I don't know. I may have crushed his windpipe. I have no concept of how long the choke, or even the whole situation lasted. Are you a man or woman? I am a little lady. Do you do jujitsu? Yes, highly recommend it for everyone, but especially women. It is less about strength. More about preparation and leverage. Anyone can do it. I've lived in Detroit for the past 20 years, and while the city is going through some awesome changes, there is still plenty of terrible crime happening. About 8 years ago I was finishing up my shift at a local bathhouse when this deranged guy in nothing but a towel came out of a sauna looking for his money. I don't think most Redditors are familiar with these types of establishments, but you usually get a small locker when you enter to store your stuff. You have a key on a kind of a scrunchy thing that you keep on your ankle or wrist. Basically what you get at a water park when you go swimming. Anyway, there are signs all over the locker room, saunas, private rooms that say to keep your stuff in your locker. It's Detroit after all. I politely told the guy that I don't know where his money is and asked him if he kept it in his locker. I don't know what this guy was on, but this was the wrong thing to say to him. He started spouting off that I was the one who took his money and started charging at me. I panicked and sidestepped the guy, and he tripped over my foot as I was dodging him, and he tried to regain his balance, but since this was near the tubs, he slipped on the wet tile and fell headfirst into the squared off base of the Adonis statue. Instantly lights out. A pool of blood formed under him. This made matters worse because the rest of the clients freaked out because they didn't want the cops to come see them at the bathhouse, so they all kinda stampeded towards the door. It was total madness. Turns out the guy died on the spot and security cameras showed that he came at me. I wouldn't exactly say you killed him, he did most of it himself. I was robbed at a gas station at knife point one night in 2015. The guy unfortunately was hopped up on something strong, PCP or meth, maybe. I was standing against my car waiting on the pump, and he popped out from behind it with a fairly large kitchen knife. He never even really said what it was he wanted, wallet, keys, etc. Just yelling incoherently. I had plenty of room to get away at that moment, but he chased me down while giving me a few slashes on the back of the arm and cornered me against an L-shaped building across the street. Probably the most horrible experience I've ever had. I was essentially begging him to walk away, not just because my life was in danger, but that my escape options were quickly dwindling and the only one that remained was my sidearm. I did not want to kill a 20-something-year-old who was clearly troubled. He had already cut me a little, and I could tell there was no reasoning with him. After several minutes of him screaming gibberish and me trying to calm him down, he suddenly started advancing. I yelled something to the effect of, "Stop, Drew," and when he continued, I fired 3 times, and he was down. The gas station attendant had already called police, but unfortunately they didn't arrive until 2 minutes after I had to pull the trigger. When they pulled up, I set my pistol down and put my hands on my head, I guess to make sure I wasn't victim number 2. They cuffed us both, likely just procedure, but after 5 to 10 minutes, me and 2 other witnesses gave statements. They gave me my pistol back, and I was free to go. I was surprised at how quickly the cops assessed the situation, determined I was innocent and let me go. I thought I was going to jail for the night until my self-defense was proven, or at least sit there answering questions for an hour. Though I suppose one of them may have gone in and seen the CCTV footage. What's odd is that I've had to take a life before. I was a security contractor in Iraq and had to defend myself and others there too. But there's something different when it's just some drugged up kid, or any civilian for that matter. Something eats at you those first couple years and you constantly ask yourself if you made the right decision. I constantly wonder what would have happened if I had simply tried to run, the attacker sobered up a little, or the cops had arrived sooner with something less than lethal. All in all, I saved my own life, but taking one never feels right or good, even when it's justified. In my encounters with people on PCP, it tends to make them fast and strong. I don't think you were going to outrun him if that brings you solace. Imagine if it hadn't been someone capable of defending themselves. I know it sounds morbid, but after he went down, it's like every muscle in his body relaxed and he was half the size he was when he approached me. The stuff literally turned a 160-pound kid into what looked like a 200-pound mammoth, until the end. I believe it. There was this beast of a human that was schizophrenic and liked to take PCP a lot. He was cuffed to a hospital bed and walked out of the ER carrying it. After that they had to shackle him if he was restrained. Hospital beds are heavy as fuck, probably 500 pounds or more. I was traveling down Highway 277 just south of Del Rio, Texas, no more than 5 miles from the US-Mexico border. Me and all my infinite wisdom stopped to take a leak on the side of the road. As I was zipping up, I got hit over the back of the head. Apparently, it was some sort of initiation deal and it was this 17 or 18-year-old kid that hit me. He didn't put enough oats into it and it just dazed me and knocked me to the ground. Two of them started to get into my truck and one started to go through my pockets. I hit him with my elbow and then rolled over on top of him and found a rock about the size of a softball. I hit him in the head with it until he quit struggling. One of the others jumped out of the truck to come help his buddy. I threw my rock at him and rushed my driver door. I got my hand on my revolver, shot at the guy who I threw the rock at, then leveled the pistol at the guy who was sitting in my passenger seat and told him to stay there with his hands on the dash. While I was trying to find my phone, a border patrol unit showed up, and then another and another. When it was all said and done, I got off with no charge because the border patrol watched it all go down on a surveillance camera. I had to go back into Del Rio and go to the hospital because I was concussed. The guy I beat with a rock died before the ambulance got there, the guy I shot bled out on the way to the hospital, and the third guy was held and then deported. Moral of the story: don't stop to take a leak in the Barditch 5 miles from the border at 1 a.m. 8 years ago I killed a man who pulled me into an alley and tried to grape me at knife point. It wasn't like a movie, I wasn't walking around at midnight dressed like a hooker. It was the middle of the day downtown and I was walking back to my car after getting lunch, in normal everyday clothes, light sweater and jeans. I had to walk down a short alley, maybe 30 feet, beside the restaurant to get to the parking lot, and he came up from behind me and dragged me into a shorter alley in between the back of the restaurant and a wall against the lot. Before I knew what was happening, he had me pinned in a corner with his elbow on my neck and a knife in his other hand. I still remember him vividly saying, "Don't fucking scream and you don't die. You're gonna like it." My hands were instinctively pushing against his chest trying to keep him away from me when I realized what was happening and where I was. I had a pistol concealed in my waistband, so I drew it and fired one shot from inches away. The guy backed up off me as if in shock and I emptied the magazine. He stumbled a bit and collapsed right there. Police and bystanders were there in seconds. I went into total shock and barely remember what happened immediately after, but police walked me into the parking lot and sat me down. They transported me to the police department as soon as medical services turned up and they looked me over. At the police department, they interviewed me and filled me in on what they knew. They said the guy died at the scene, and there was a partial witness who was in the parking lot and saw me being dragged away, and that no charges were being considered at that time. A woman from a victim counseling agency came and spoke with me for a couple hours before my father took me home. I was numb for the first couple days. I could barely even speak until I talked to the counselor. I stayed with my father that night, and though I didn't talk to him much about it, I posted on a forum that I lurked. The community was mostly supportive, with a few people calling me a troll, and a couple even hinting that I did something wrong because the guy probably had a hard life or was abused as a child. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the next day I was really angry, both at the man who attacked me and at the people online who empathized with him. I stopped posting online and started working more, and continued therapy, and after a while I was mostly fine. After a week or so I opened up to my family about it and they helped the most, I think. In the end, no charges were ever filed against me. It took police a couple days to ID the guy, but he had a record for sexual assault and other violent crimes. I think that helped me recover, knowing he wasn't a normal guy who made a bad choice. Yes, that was actually something I considered at first. It took almost a month to officially close the investigation and return my gun, and in the meantime my father bought me another because he knew I felt uncomfortable leaving the house without one. Between therapy, posting about it anonymously online in a forum, and talking with my family, I'm over that fear now, I think, but I still carry a pistol every day.